I have been on the bench long enough to know that there are moments when a courtroom stops being a room and becomes a mirror. It stops reflecting legal procedure and starts reflecting character. That happened the instant Ethan Graves struck his 70-year-old mother in my courtroom. I did not need a psychologist, a social worker, or a stack of expert reports to tell me what kind of son I was looking at. I saw it in the raised hand that lingered in the air after the slap. I saw it in the smirk that sat where remorse should have been. I saw it in the way his mother, Marilyn Graves, staggered under fluorescent lights and still whispered, "Please don't." Not because she was protecting herself, but because she was protecting him. That is not love. That is damage that has been trained to answer to his name. People ask me all the time how I know when a case is really about more than money. This is how. The paperwork says one thing, the people say another. On paper, this was a dispute about a loan, missing property, and a son who had not repaid what he owed. In real life, it was about control, humiliation, fear, and a 70-year-old woman who had spent so long making excuses for her son that she no longer knew where his behavior ended and her guilt began. The moment he slapped her, he told the truth faster than any witness ever could. The sound of that slap traveled through the courtroom before anyone breathed again. The bailiff moved immediately. The gallery recoiled. Marilyn gripped the witness stand with thin, trembling fingers, trying to hold on to dignity while the red print of her son's hand bloomed against her cheek. Ethan did not look shocked by what he had done. He looked inconvenienced by the reaction to it. That is an important distinction. A person who loses control and is horrified by it is one kind of problem. A person who uses force and then acts as though everyone else is being dramatic is another. I told him to put his hand down. He did it slowly, almost lazily, as if lowering it were a favor to me instead of the bare minimum required of an adult who had just assaulted his own mother in open court. That told me something else. This was not his first time intimidating someone. It was simply the first time he had done it in a room where intimidation had no legal value. When I asked him his name for the record, he answered with the clipped arrogance of a man who thought names mattered only when they carried power. Ethan Graves, late 30s, shoulders broad, chin high, the kind of posture men use when they mistake aggression for authority. Then I turned to Marilyn, 70 years old, soft voice, hands shaking so hard the tissue between her fingers was reduced to confetti. She said she did not mean for things to get heated. Heated. That is what women say when they have spent years downgrading danger so they can survive it. I asked her what happened right before he struck her. She said she had asked him for what he owed. $18,000 she had loaned him the year before when he came to her in tears, claiming he was about to be evicted. He told her he had nowhere to go. He told her he would be sleeping in his car. He told her he was humiliated and desperate. She believed him because that is what mothers do. She reached into savings meant for the final fragile years of her own life and handed him the money because she thought not doing so might cost her her son. That is the cruel genius of manipulation inside families. It knows exactly which love to exploit and exactly what fear to awaken. When I asked him whether he had repaid her, he deflected. He said she exaggerated everything. He said it had been a gift. He said his mother rewrote history because she was forgetful. Let me tell you something. People who want to control you will often try to make your memory stand trial before they do. If they can make you doubt what you heard, what you saw, what you signed, what you felt, then they can move through your life like a thief with a flashlight and never once call themselves a criminal. I asked Marilyn whether there had been yelling, threats, grabbing, throwing things. She tried to protect him. They almost always do. But when I told her I needed plain answers, not excuses, she lifted her sleeve and showed me the bruise on her forearm. Yellow, purple, fading, but not gone. Old enough to be denied, new enough to be remembered. She said he had grabbed her when she tried to take back her checkbook. He interrupted immediately to say he had only stopped her from doing something reckless. That word reckless sat in the room like poison. He had taken her money, her peace, and her property, and still wanted the language of responsibility. Then I asked the question that so often matters most. Did anyone else witness anything? Marilyn looked toward the side door with the fearful reflex of someone who has been trained to measure every word against possible retaliation. She mentioned a neighbor, Rebecca Shaw, 8 years next door, mid-50s. No interest in drama. She came forward and did what decent neighbors do when they realize normal has become dangerous. She told me she had heard yelling again and again. She told me the tone had changed over recent months from argument to hostility. Then she told me she had seen Ethan carrying storage boxes out of Marilyn's home. Multiple boxes, fast, purposeful, like a man moving things he did not want noticed. That changed the case immediately, because now we were no longer dealing only with an unpaid loan. We were dealing with secret removal of property. Rebecca said some boxes had labels on them: bedroom, memorabilia, jewelry. Marilyn's face changed when she heard that. Confusion first, then betrayal, then the beginning of recognition. That is another thing I have seen on the bench many times. The slow, horrifying moment when a victim realizes the losses she had been explaining away were not accidents, not forgetfulness, not age, but theft committed by someone she loved. I asked Ethan what was in the boxes. He said they were mostly his. Rebecca corrected him without heat. Some of those labels were Marilyn's. Then Marilyn began naming what was missing: wedding china, photo albums, her husband Bill's watch, the quilt her mother made with her own hands. Ethan called them dust collectors. I told him no, they were not dust collectors. They were history, grief, marriage, motherhood, continuity, memory. When a man sells such things out from under his own mother, he is not decluttering a house. He is liquidating a life. The clerk pulled up online listings. I wanted documentation, not theater. There they were on the monitor for everyone to see: the dresser, the china, the quilt, the fishing gear, and Bill's watch displayed for strangers like inventory from an estate sale. Except the owner was alive and sitting 12 feet away watching her marriage and memories priced for quick pickup. One by one, the listings told the truth Ethan would not. Offers pending, messages exchanged, cash expected. He said he was only testing the market. That is the kind of lie people tell when the evidence is already doing the talking. When I had the listing for the watch enlarged, Marilyn almost came apart in front of me. She recognized it instantly. Bill wore it every Sunday, not because it was expensive, because it belonged to the rhythm of their life together. Church, supper, family, ordinary rituals that become sacred only after someone dies and can no longer perform them beside you. Ethan said he deserved it after everything he had done for her. That phrase matters. Deserve. It tells you how he saw the relationship, not as a bond of care, but as an account from which he was entitled to withdraw. Then I asked about the watch box, because if you have been doing this long enough, you learn that people who strip mine sentimental property often make mistakes around containers, documentation, and packaging. He froze. He told me it was just a box. It was not just a box. The box led to the buyer, and the buyer led to another truth. Daniel Trent came into court carrying the velvet pouch. He said Ethan told him the watch belonged to his mother. Then he added the detail that broke the room open. Ethan had said his mother was dead. He told the buyer he needed money because he was moving her into a facility. The watch was sold, the box was sold, the lie was sold with them. I asked Marilyn whether she knew anything about a facility. The answer was immediate and terrified. No. Ethan began to call it planning. Planning ahead, exploring options, thinking practically. Nonsense. Practical planning does not require forged signatures and expedited admission packets hidden from the person being institutionalized.
I've been on the bench long enough to recognize when a case is no longer just about law, it becomes a reflection of character. That moment came the instant Ethan Graves struck his 70-year-old mother in my courtroom. In that second, I didn't need expert reports or psychological evaluations. Everything I needed to understand about him was right there. It was in the way his hand lingered after the slap, in the absence of remorse, and in the quiet, trembling voice of his mother, Marilyn, who whispered, "Please don't." Not to protect herself, but to protect him. That wasn't love. That was damage. On paper, this case was simple: a dispute over money, $18,000 loaned and never repaid. But in reality, it was about something much deeper: control, fear, and a lifetime of manipulation. Marilyn had given her son that money when he claimed he was about to be evicted. He came to her desperate, emotional, convincing. Like many mothers, she believed him. She gave him her savings, money meant for her final years, because she thought she was saving her son. But the truth was different. He had never been at risk of eviction. It was all a lie, carefully designed to trigger her compassion. And that was just the beginning. When questioned, Ethan dismissed everything. He claimed the money was a gift. He suggested his mother was forgetful. That's a common tactic. Make the victim doubt their own memory so the truth becomes negotiable. But evidence doesn't forget. A neighbor came forward. She had seen Ethan removing boxes from Marilyn's home, boxes labeled jewelry, memorabilia, bedroom. Soon, we discovered those items listed online for sale. Family heirlooms, personal belongings, even his late father's watch. To Ethan, they were just things. To Marilyn, they were her life. Then came the most disturbing part. A buyer testified that Ethan told him his mother was dead.
Dead.
He claimed he needed money because he was placing her in a care facility. But Marilyn was very much alive and had no knowledge of any such plan. In fact, documents revealed that Ethan had forged her signature to admit her into a long-term care facility the very next day. He wasn't planning care. He was planning removal. By placing her in a facility, he would gain control of her home, her finances, and her life. Everything he had done, every lie, every sale, every withdrawal, was part of a larger plan. Even his justification was telling. He claimed resentment from childhood. He said he deserved what he took. But resentment is not a license for abuse. Hurt does not justify harm. When we reviewed financial records, the pattern became clear. Not just $18,000, but thousands more taken in smaller withdrawals. This wasn't desperation, it was systematic exploitation. And when I asked him directly if he ever intended to repay his mother, he said no. Because in his mind, she owed him. That was the moment the case fully revealed itself. Not confusion. Not misunderstanding. Entitlement. Marilyn, however, changed during that hearing. She began afraid, minimizing everything, trying to protect her son. But by the end, she saw the truth. She said something powerful. I loved you enough to believe you, but love cannot survive where honesty doesn't exist. My ruling was clear. Full repayment of the $18,000. Compensation for every item sold. Immediate return of remaining property. Preservation of all financial accounts. Referral of forgery and fraud to authorities. Because abuse inside a family is still abuse. Theft by a son is still theft. Forgery in the name of care is still a crime. I also told Marilyn something every elderly parent needs to hear. You deserve safety. You deserve dignity. And you have the right to live your life without being controlled or erased. Care is not control. Care is not secrecy. Care is not taking advantage. Real care is respectful, transparent, and accountable. Ethan's slap in the courtroom was shocking, but it wasn't the real story. It was only the loudest moment in a long pattern of abuse. The real harm had been happening for months. The lies, the manipulation, the theft, the forgery, and the plan to quietly remove a woman from her own life. That's what the court stopped. Not just a raised hand, but the entire system behind it. Because a courtroom cannot fix everything, but it can draw a line. It can say, clearly and publicly, this is not love. This is not care. And this will not be allowed.